Okay, it is 5 p.m. on the West Coast. Welcome to the first Thursday meditation, Dharma Talk, Refuge Recovery World Services. I'm Noah. Welcome to anybody that's new to this. This is not a Refuge Recovery meeting. If you're looking for a Refuge Recovery meeting, you can find them on our website. This is a teacher-led meditation and talk, and time for some discussion, Q&A towards the end. About 3 weeks ago, we started a series for the 3 months ago for the first Thursdays of the Eightfold Path, where we've already been through intention and understanding, or understanding and then intention. And so tonight we will meditate, and then the topic will be communication and community, and what's traditionally taught in Buddhism as wise speech or right speech. So we'll talk about that tonight. I'll try to practice right speech while I'm teaching some about right speech. But let's start with a meditation. Welcome, everyone. We'll sit for about 20 minutes. So find a way to be that is relaxed, upright. Find a posture that feels sustainable for a period of sitting meditation. When you're ready, allowing your eyes to be gently closed, taking a moment to soften, to release any unnecessary tension in your body. Establishing the intention to be friendly, to be patient, to be kind and accepting of ourselves as we meditate, to be friendly towards the mind, no matter how many times it wanders, to be friendly towards the body, even if it gets uncomfortable sitting still, towards the emotions. And from this place of kindness, we bring awareness to the first foundation, towards the body. Mindfulness of the body is feeling what's happening physically right now. Bringing awareness to the sensation of sitting itself, the contact with the seat you're on, the chair, the couch, the cushion. Feeling the heart beating, the lungs breathing, all of the points of contact where your hands are resting in your lap, your feet, on the floor. The eyelids touching the lower lid, the lips, the tongue resting in the palate of the mouth. Because the breath is always coming and going, it's creating sensations in the trunk of the body, at the nostrils. Becomes a good object of awareness, mindfulness of the breath, a core part of our practice. The Buddha's initial straightforward, simple instruction. Breathing in, know that you're breathing in. Breathing out, know that you're breathing out. So spending a few minutes giving your full attention to the body breathing, the sensations created by the breath as it comes and goes. And when the attention is drawn away from the breath, back into thinking or a sound or some other emotion or sensation in the body, acknowledge what has called for your attention, and then come back to the breath, return. Perhaps noting in and out with each breath to keep it simple, to focus our attention. That intention of kindness, friendliness, patience, acceptance that we establish in the beginning of our meditation, we have to remember, come back to over and over when the mind starts planning or reminiscing, worrying, rather than battling or having an adversarial relationship to the thinking mind, just friendliness. The mind thinks, that's just what it does. Come back to the breath. disengaging, politely excusing yourself from the conversation in your head, and come back to your body sitting here, breathing. You're fairly new to meditation, use the breath as the primary practice. Disengaging from the thinking mind, helping us break our addiction to thinking, our identification, the mind that tells us what to do, what to feel. Such a revelation to realize we don't have to obey the mind. We can ignore it. We can come back to the breath. But this is just the first step, the first foundation. The Buddha encourages us to expand to the whole body and to what we're feeling. What's the feeling tone? Pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? As we open to the sense doors, hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, all of the sensations and emotions that the body experiences, we perceive as either pleasant or unpleasant, or perhaps neutral. So we bring present time, kind awareness, non-judgmental awareness to what's happening in the present moment and how does it feel, including sounds or thoughts, sensations or smells. The third foundation invites us to not ignore the mind, but to observe it, bring mindfulness to how thoughts are arising and passing, and how thoughts also have a feeling tone. Some of what's happening in the mind is pleasant, some is unpleasant, some is neutral. Mindfulness begins to reveal the truth of impermanence, the insubstantial, transient, ephemeral nature of sensation, how it's constantly changing, how even the strongest emotion arises and sustains, but then dissolves, passes. Thoughts coming and going. Some thoughts are very repetitive. The mind gets obsessed, repeats these thoughts over and over, but they're impermanent, even if repetitive. They have a beginning, a middle, an end before they start up again. Paying close attention to how everything is changing as a process, is impermanent. The other aspect of becoming aware of the body, the heart, the mind, observing how the mind thinks all by itself, how the body feels all by itself, breathes all by itself. The impersonal nature of existence. This body continuing to age, to change. This body that craves pleasure, that hates pain. The result of millions of years of biological evolution, not so personal. It's just what it's like to have a body, to be in a body. It's not your fault. It's not personal. And as we observe our minds, we see how out of control, how much is arising in the mind that we wish wasn't. All of these afflictive emotions, difficult mind states, the judgment, the comparing, the craving, the resenting, the fear, the worry. Not your fault, just what the human mind does, not personal. But so much of it is so unpleasant. So we learn to bring compassion. Mindfulness of the unpleasant leads us to compassion, friendliness, tolerance, mercy. mindfulness of the pleasant and our tendency to crave, to cling, leads us to letting go, non-attached, non-clinging, non-attached appreciation of the impermanent, pleasant experiences. Ending this sitting with just a couple of minutes of kindness, appreciation towards yourself. Here you are, recovering, healing, doing what needs to be done to get free from addiction, to get free from suffering. Turning towards yourself with as much sincerity as you can at this point, and with gratitude, with appreciation. And saying to ourselves, I love you, keep going. Saying to yourself, I love you. And maybe it's I love you as much as I can in this moment. That's okay. But to keep going towards healing, towards recovering, towards freedom. Freedom from addiction. Freedom from suffering. Freedom from ignorance and confusion. Encouraging ourselves. I love you. Keep going. Ready, you can allow your eyes to be open. Bring attention back to whatever space you're in, room. Useful after a meditation to take a moment to recollect, to reflect what just happened as we tried to pay attention, as we tried to be patient and kind and friendly and compassionate. It's a process. It's a long-term process for all of us to learn to be here, to see clearly as we slowly over the months and years of our meditation practice learn to respond wisely, appropriately. And likewise for tonight's topic, learning to the third factor of the Eightfold Path of Refuge Recovery, learning to communicate in a wise way, and to engage with community, to be part of what we call Sangha, the Buddhist term that we use for the community, like fellowship is another word. Now, when I was creating Refuge Recovery, and I was quite clear in my own, convinced that a core part of recovering from addiction is connection and is community and is peer support. I learned that in the 12-step world, for my first couple of decades of recovery before Refuge Recovery existed, the importance of having a community of recovering people to be supported by and to offer service, to be supportive of friendships. And when I looked at using the Buddha's Four Noble Truths and Eightfold Path for our recovery program, I was like, oh, shoot, it doesn't say anywhere in the Eightfold Path about the importance of community. The Eightfold Path is really this sort of map of the individual's process of purifying karma, developing wisdom, and attaining liberation. But it didn't say anything about community. Now, it does talk about how we communicate and how we behave, right? Wise communication and wise action. But so I threw in there into this third fact, also refuge in community. And it does feel like it was the place, it is the place in the Eightfold Path that, is about communion, is about connection, is about how we talk to each other and the importance of how we talk to each other and the importance of how we listen to each other and the importance of being in relationship, relational mindfulness. And part of the core principle around being careful with our speech is what we talked about a couple months ago, understanding karma, understanding cause and effect. So if you missed that one, you can go back and listen to it on the YouTube. But of course, the Buddha's teachings and the Buddhist view that we are following here in Refuge Recovery is based on an understanding that there is cause and effect, and that positive actions, positive speech, speech is an action, is a volitional, what we say has karma. Everything that we say has karma. So just take a moment to remember that, to think about that. Maybe you don't believe this, and that's okay, but just to every single volitional communication is creating either something positive for us, positive karmic fruit, the outcome of honesty, kindness, patience, tolerance, compassion, all of those. When we're communicating that, we're creating a positive karmic momentum for ourselves. Now, when we're communicating intolerance, judgment, anger, dishonesty, when we are creating negativity for ourselves. Even when it feels like our intolerance is called for, even when it feels like it's justified to be angry and judgmental, and we still have the karma, justified or not, we still have the karma of that communication. Because of this whole process that's about purifying our karma, meaning that we come to recovery, we come to the practice probably with a whole bunch of negative, what we call unwholesome or bad karma, based on our own reactions to what our life, right? Probably we've been dishonest, we've been unskillful with our speech, we've been unkind, most likely. Once in a while you meet that addict who says, I was a pretty good person. I didn't lie, cheat, and steal. I just like that wine. But most of us, can look at our lives and say, like, oh, yeah, I was caught up in my own pain, and my own pain spilled out onto the people around me. And then it's, and in all kinds of unskillful ways that created, negative karmic momentum. And as we come into recovery, this whole system of Buddhism, the Four Truths, the Eightfold Path, is about leading us to freedom. And in order to get free, we have to change. It's not about just not drinking and using, or, the food stuff or the sex stuff or the money stuff or the codependency relational stuff. It's not that's just the manifestation of our underlying confusion and is manifested as ignorance. But The karma is our work. How am I going to become kind, loving, patient, compassionate, wise? And so just like meditation takes a long time to develop, to become very proficient at being mindful or at being forgiving or being compassionate, changing our speech habits takes a long time for most of us. There's 5, when it comes to wise communication, there's 4 or 5 things to think about when we're communicating something. Now, I also want to pause and say, although traditionally this is talked about as wise speech or wise, I translated it as communication because it's not just speech. It's everything that we write, everything that we text, everything that we email, everything that we post online on social media is all communication. And beyond that, also even just facial expressions are also communication. How that sort of how you look at someone, giving someone a dirty look, mad dogging, or stink eye, whatever you call it, is also a communication that is negative. That is, there's some negative intention behind that communication. The way we look at each other, that judgment, that anger, that sort of a critical look. We roll our eyes. Karma in rolling our eyes, right? So it's not just what we say. Even body language, all tightened up on fucking, is expressing something. It might just be expressing I feel uncomfortable, but it also might be, kind of sometimes we're projecting that onto the people around us. So all communication, and I don't know how many of you have done a silent meditation retreat with us yet, but on silent meditation retreat, we not only don't talk to each other, we also don't look at each other because there's so much communication in eye contact. You say so much with your eyes. So also, I know this is sort of a lot, but there's karma in how we look at each other. Are we looking with kindness or are we looking with judgment? Are we looking with kindness and acceptance and friendliness? Or are we looking at each other with that kind of comparing, judging, critical tendency? So wise communication from our Buddhist perspective is honesty, first and foremost. Am I telling the truth with what I'm communicating? Is it true? Now, the second one is it appropriate or is it useful? And this is where this can be really the rub for a lot of people in communication, because there's we can be telling the truth, but it's not appropriate. It's we're using it as a way to cause harm. It's not the appropriate, because then we go from, is it true? Is it useful? Is it the appropriate time to communicate this? I've seen that in my life so many times where I'm saying something and it's true and I think it's useful, but I'm blurting it out. And it's not the appropriate time. It's not the appropriate container. It's not the time to be communicating this. It's in public, or it's it's not in the container that I need to have this one-on-one conversation with somebody and I'm saying it in front of other people, and it makes it inappropriate because it was a true thing that needed to be communicated, but not publicly. So that's for us to look at. Is it true? Is it useful? Is it the appropriate time to communicate this? And is it coming from a place of kindness? Now, kindness is such a I don't know, umbrella term or, when I think of kindness, some of you've probably heard me think about this. Think of kindness as like situational ethics. Kindness isn't always being nice in that, you know what I mean? Like sometimes we think of kindness as like being nice, of being, sometimes the kindest thing to do is to say no to somebody. Right? We think, ooh, that's unkind. Like, don't, can't say no to somebody. The kind thing to do, it feels like, we think it's, if I'm being kind, I'm saying yes. But the kindest thing to do, like for the active alcoholic or addict or, addict that's asking for something that is going to cause them harm, even money. Like, when someone's asking you for money and they're going to use it to feed their addiction, their alcoholism, whatever it is. The kindest response is absolutely not. I'm not going to participate in that. I'm not going to enable that. Now, they might not take that as, well, you're not very kind and generous. I thought you were a Buddhist. Like, I thought you were kind and generous. You're not going to give me any money. Or, sometimes it's the kind thing to let somebody come crash on the couch and I want to detox. But sometimes it's like, actually, last time you walked off with, some of my stuff. So I can't do that again. The kind of thing now to do is to say no. So in communication, there's so many different situations where we have to take them, each one is different, but that commitment to, I want to be honest and I want to be careful with my speech. Is it appropriate? Is it the right time? Is it coming from kindness? So a commitment to rigorous honesty, but with some awareness of the context of that rigorous honesty. So some basic guidelines for wise speech, wise communication, and then community and taking refuge in the Sangha. And where we communicate with each other, we attend our meetings and we share for our 3 minutes or our 5-minute leads or our speaker meetings or whatever, and we show up and we tell the truth. And then we talk to each other and we welcome the new people. And, hopefully, we're welcoming the people that are new and being kind and open and accepting of each other. Even if their speech isn't wise, still being kind and tolerant and open. Every once in a while, we get stuff at, Refuge Recovery World Services about, people in meetings who want to kick someone out of a meeting because they're not practicing right speech, because they're not behaving skillfully. And, there is a place, if somebody's really being disruptive, that, there's a process for that. There's a safety statement and process for that. But also, like, a whole bunch of addicts getting together, even though we're trying to practice Buddhism and wise speech, and of course, people are going to come in, and even people that have been around for a while aren't going to necessarily be practicing wise communication and aren't going to necessarily have wise views. And a huge part of our commitment to community is accepting everyone, making sure that we're inclusive, that we're including other people who have ignorant views and ignorant speech tendencies, and also welcome to be here and to heal, rather than saying like, hey, you're not quite skillful enough to receive our help. Your political, social, whatever views don't fit with ours, so you're not welcome to heal from addiction. So this radical, inclusive, accepting community, which accepts even people who are still lying and cheating and stealing. Now, as individual members of community, we have to practice a lot of discernment. We have to be quite careful. Just because somebody's in our community, in Refuge Recovery, doesn't mean that they're trustworthy. Doesn't mean that they're honest. Doesn't mean that. So we have, it's quite tricky, I think, because yes, on one hand, welcome everyone and give people a chance and support them. But also remember, this is a whole bunch of addicts, many of whom are coming from a lifetime of suffering and confusion and dishonesty and have not become trustworthy people yet. So just because we're in recovery doesn't mean we're trustworthy people from the gate. And even sometimes people who've been around for years who haven't drank, haven't used, but are still lying and creating negative karma in their relationships, in their lives. The community gives us so much opportunity for patience and tolerance and compassion and forgiveness of each other. So many opportunities to be of service. And my sense in community, and this is in the book around this topic, around this chapter, around, there's kind of three sort of levels, I think. There's the people, like when we come into recovery, that are helping us, the people that have been around, seem like they have some wisdom, seem like they have some recovery, the people that we're looking up to and saying, well, how do I do this? And that are, either mentoring us or just the people that we kind of look up to in a little ways of like, oh, these are the people that are doing it. Let me watch what they're doing. They're coming to meetings, they're meditating, they're going to retreats, they've done their inventories. Let me look at the people who are doing it. And then hopefully the second level is the people that are kind of peers. Not that they've been doing it much longer than you, but people that they're kind of your cohort in recovery, your of kind of like, oh yeah, we kind of got into this together and we're on this path together, and there are our peers and our Sangha in that way. It makes sense, those two, those that are kind of doing it and we're watching them, and then the people that we're doing it together with. And then there's the people that are coming in, that are newer, that are looking to us, that our job is to be of service to them, to communicate this is possible and this is how it's done. And especially with those people, to be extra patient and tolerant, and also to have really good boundaries with, to say, hey, this is what's done. And like, do your inventory and then give me a call, and hit a meeting and then give me a call. And, to be careful for our codependent caretaking tendencies, that balance of being available, but without being too attached to the outcome. So these are some of my thoughts about the third factor of our Eightfold Path. Just some brief thoughts. We've got about 15 minutes left for discussion around wise communication and the importance of taking refuge in community. And there's that sort of trendy thing that was going around the last few years of the opposite of addiction is connection. And I think it's been some of my experience of like, when I'm connected to Sangha, when I'm connected to community, it's a huge part of recovery for me, and always has been. And of course, it's the whole philosophy behind Buddhism, take refuge in the Sangha, the whole behind Refuge Recovery. We take refuge in the Sangha. This is where we find help. But also with that warning of like, but also be careful. There's a whole bunch of crazy motherfuckers in this program. I'm in that special position where I get all of these reports, people kind of being like, well, they did this and they said this, and this person that I met on retreat did this. And, it's like, yep. That happens. Even in recovery, that happens. And it's unavoidable, probably. We have to use more discernment. We can't blame the community. We just have to use more discernment of who we let in close. So I'm going to open it to questions, comments. You can raise your hand in the reactions button down at the bottom there. Kat, go ahead, get us started.
Hey Noah, hey Sangha. I don't know if it's really a question, but I was like reflecting on my relationship with my family, and how like like pretty much everyone we don't talk because we can't because of right speech, like because we haven't been able to communicate well. And the more that I get or not get sober, but the more in recovery I am, the more awake I'm becoming into the fact that like my family, and they're not bad people, they're just emotionally immature people. And that's not making them a bad thing. But I just wanted to just say that because I have a hard time accepting it now. Like, okay, well, it's going to be like this forever because they're not going to change, or not forever, but like probably my whole life. So what would you say, like how to like talk to the one person that I have in my life? Because it's hard because I feel like she's, she's not abusing me, but it's more like my buttons are getting pressed every time. Like I literally can, it's hard to talk to her, it's hard. Anyway, that's
I'll say a couple of things about it. One is the way that kind of the Buddha talk about this was, and there's this term where he says, avoid fools and draw near to the wise. And there's an actual encouragement to like, hey, if you're, like, even if it's your family, if your family are fools filled with dishonesty and, kind of, then don't be very close with those people. Be very close with the people in your life who are trying to be honest and loving and kind and, on the path of wisdom. So there is some encouragement to have really good boundaries, even if it's family. Now, most of us, are going to say, hey, they're my family. I'm going to, give them some, I'm going to deal with them some. And my father used to tell this story about his relationship with his father, my grandfather. And my father got into Buddhism and spirituality but always had conflict with his dad. And every time he went to, visit his parents, and he got along with his mom, but always had, shouting matches with his father. But, my dad was a hippie and, grandpa was a, conservative Jew a little bit, and then was just kind of like, it was hard for them to get along. But my father tells it the way that he tells the story. He said, the more that I practice the Dharma, the more that I practice right speech, the less reactive I became. And I got to the point that no matter what, his father said to him, I just wouldn't take the bait. I just wouldn't, get into the political discussion and I would just be like, that's interesting that you believe that, and meet him with compassion and meet him with wisdom. And he said at some point, his mother, my grandmother, noticed that, after kind of, decades of conflict between these two, that my father had come to a place in his Dharma practice where he wasn't engaging in it. And it takes two to really create that kind of conflict. If we can come to the place where we're just, no matter what they say, oh, interesting, I hear you. I hear you, and I don't need to let you know that I think you're completely and totally wrong, but I just hear you. Now, also, I think I like that story. I aspire to that. I think we can all aspire to that of no matter what, we don't need to engage in conflict. We can just say, okay, I hear you. But we also have to have the humility of I'm not there yet. I think, one of the real tests for our, and this is appropriate, the holidays, family, holidays, right speech, it's actually where we see our progress and our recovery and our in our life when we're around our family, right? Our family push our buttons for most of us, right? Our families, we regress. I go back to the rebellious teenager or whatever. We regress around our families. And so when we're with them, we can kind of see, like, actually, I'm more honest, I'm more patient, I'm more tolerant, still not perfect, but you'll see where you're at in your practice when you're around your family. If you choose to engage with them around, these holiday seasons where most of us do, we choose to engage. So I hope that's helpful.
Yes, thank you.
There was another hand, but it went down. Was that, did you change your mind? You got scared off? I don't blame you. Rebecca, was that you that had your hand up before? Yeah, go ahead. And then I'll go to Cato.
So I thought maybe you would answer my question while you were answering Kat's. So I thanks for the meditation. I'm kind of I forget often that I don't have to follow every thought, especially if it makes me feel bad. I feel like I have to feel those ones. And thanks for the reminder. That's not the case. I guess what I'm wondering is more along the lines of, like, as we are in this program, as we get further into recovery, and there are people around us who are not, in the Sangha, who don't understand what we're doing, and they don't understand the changes in our lives, and the things that maybe we're discarding that no longer serve us. How do we interact with them? Because people think I've lost my shit. So any advice for that?
It is the first part of what I started saying to Kat, draw near to the wise. Draw nearer and nearer to the people in your life that are living this path of trying to be wise with our communication, trying to be mindful, forgiving, compassionate, practicing, what we call the Sangha. This is the Buddha's advice. He goes as far as to say, if you can't find any wise companions on this path, better to be alone than surround yourself with fools. So, and there is a natural progression as we, go from, like, hey, I'm an alcoholic addict, surrounded by other alcoholics, and, or maybe not, but to, hey, I want to live this life of wisdom. I want to live this life of service and, not materialist aspirations, but spiritual aspirations. That it does make our world kind of smaller in some ways, but then also bigger once we connect with, there's all of these other people on this spiritual path, for lack of a better word, path of recovery, of wisdom. Draw nearer to those, and then I think we kind of naturally, fall away from some of the other relationships in our lives, even family members who aren't on the same page. The one thing that I'll say about that, and this is maybe my experience, I don't know if this is true for you, Rebecca, or other people. When I hear that teaching from the Buddha to avoid the fools, it's a little bit what I was saying around the tolerance in the Sangha. I find that I still have very much connection with, draw towards, and commitment to staying, for me, like in the punk scene or the motorcycle scene, or, there's some scenes for me where that's mostly knuckleheads. There's not a lot of wisdom, but I still feel very much connected to being there. And over in my recovery, I find that being part of those communities, I'm the person in that community that people come to when they want help. And so I don't completely avoid it. I show up as a sober, meditating Buddhist person into those realms. And then, the people that get interested say, like, oh, cool. Like, I need to get sober. I'd like to learn about meditation. And we get to be of service so that we don't completely avoid our friends and family and subcultures or genres that we actually like, like that's the kind of scene I like, even though there's not a lot of wisdom generally in that scene. But we get to be of service there. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah,
No, that's super cool. Thank you.
welcome. Cato, last one.
Hey Noah, it's good to see you. Thanks for doing these. It's nice to see everyone. Well, first, I'm not thrilled that eye rolling counts against my karma now. So that was
Sorry about that.
Yeah, that sucks. Thanks for that. And the question is kind of variation on a theme, and you'll know what I'm talking about. It's about communicating my own recovery to either sometimes family, sometimes people outside of recovery, people I used to know, and not so much the fools. Granted, there's the fools out there, but it's more like, I think it's like my problem, of not being able. I'm proud of it. I understand how difficult it's been. I understand some of even the miracle of it all. But when I try to explain it, some shame comes in, some resistance comes in, aversion. I minimalize it, So the question is something in that frame of moving forward in this. How can I use communication to the people that I choose to and want to talk about it, and not, and not minimalize it, and talk shit about it. Something like that.
Not sure. My main thought is like, it's a process, and you're just coming out of the closet with some of your long-term relationships of like that shame of admitting I'm sober. Oof. After a while, like we get some like sober pride, and in some circles you have that. But when you come from hard drinking, hard partying, and that's like part of our identity, junkie pride, alcohol, it's fucking embarrassing to admit that you're a nerdy, sober Buddhist now. And the fucking super ego, whatever it is, our sense of self is really threatened by that. Like, I might be projecting this all over you, but I know for me, like, my identity as like a drug addict criminal fit really well. I was proud of being a thug, but then like being like a fucking Buddhist, how embarrassing. Around, how uncool in the circles that I ran in, especially fucking 35 years ago, how fucking uncool to be spiritual in my anti-religious, subculture. So some of it is just a process of like, yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable. Yeah, you're going to be a little bit embarrassed. Yeah, your mind's going to judge you and attack you a little bit. And you do it anyways. And you walk right through it with, it's true, it's useful, it's appropriate to have those, that's the piece. And I know that's where your question's coming from, when it's appropriate. Now, sometimes people get a little overzealous about this and like go out and start fucking knocking on doors and like, I'm sober Buddhist meditation guy and you should check this out. Everybody should be Buddhist now. Everybody. And, I know you're not doing that. That's not, but some people do that. So I just think is that humility of like, yeah, these are weird conversations to walk through in the first few times. And then you do it more and more and more, and you get more used to it. And then you get more identified with like, this is a much better thing to be identified with. This is a much healthier way of life. And I, somebody put in the chat, sober Buddhist nerd pride, whatever. And that's certainly happened for me some years into recovery where I was like, oh, no, this is actually much cooler than being a violent criminal. in the beginning it wasn't, but it became, oh, I actually much more interested in the power of kindness and compassion than I am in being a tough guy. Tough guy is easy. Kindness and compassion and forgiveness, and this is really radical. So you just walk through those weird conversations and then they get less weird.
That's the ticket. Thank you.
Welcome. Good to see everybody. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Although this is freely offered, if you have some donation, please considering, I said at the beginning, it's not a meeting, but like at meetings, we do accept Donna. All of that will go to Refuge Recovery. Refuge Recovery can use your financial support. We run at a deficit. I'm actually the executive director and have stopped taking a salary. I've been a volunteer executive director for the last 3 months because we don't have enough money to pay me but I just do the job anyways. We can use your support. Bottom line is we don't have the kind of financial support that we need to really run the organization. And I love this organization, and I ran it for free for, the first 8 years. I started paying myself a couple years ago, but there's not actually the money here to pay me anymore. So if you can help, please help. Whether it's $5 at the meetings you're going to or here, or it's larger donations to the nonprofit to really support what we're doing. And happy holidays, see you, see you next year. See you in January. May any goodness that comes from our practice be shared outward in all directions, shared with all living beings. May each of us get as free as possible in this lifetime, and together may we create a positive shift, a positive change on this planet. Peace out.